Hello, I'm John Cody from Rewind Room. Thank you all for tuning in to this special episode of Rewind Room. This episode is about television shows from our past, and as you can see by the title, or if you saw some of our early Instagram posts about this episode is being split into two parts for two reasons. The first reason being we had a lot to talk about in this episode, and we felt it was all essential for you guys to understand not just how important these shows were to us, but how important these shows were to the millions of children that grew up on them, and how they changed the landscape of children's television, and how they pioneered a lot of the newer shows that we're even getting to this day. And we took a little bit of extra time than we usually would to explain this. So instead of you guys having to listen to a 3 or 4 hour long episode, we thought we'd condense it a bit and release this in two parts. Part 1 being released today as of August 1st, and part 2 being released tomorrow, August 2nd. So stay tuned because you're going to get two back-to-back episodes, one after the other, one day after the other. So this is going to be a great opportunity. The second reason we decided to do this is to make it easier on the editing ourselves. As you guys know, editing a massive project, well, some of you might know, some of you might not know, can be a little tricky at times. And, when you go through and you edit and all that kind of stuff, it can take a toll. So we just wanted to make it easy on us, and we wanted to make it easy on you guys. But before we start this episode off, I just also wanted to make a quick correction of a mistake that I made in this episode. I mentioned that the Fairly Odd Parents, which I mentioned in this episode as a Cartoon Network show, was actually a Nickelodeon show. And I do mention that, and I do acknowledge that in the episode. However, when I went back and I talked to some of my friends who I watched Fairly Odd Parents with as a kid, they corrected me and said that the show was never on Cartoon Network. It was exclusively a Nickelodeon show, and we always were watching it on Nickelodeon. So either I misremembered that, or somehow I believed that that was the cause, when in fact it may not have been. So I do apologize for that mistake on my part. But secondly, I just also wanted to mention that I thank all of you, especially my friends who I talked to, for keeping me honest on that front and for correcting my mistakes. I always want to make sure that I'm delivering correct and accurate info, and I don't ever want to be making a mistake in that regard. Without further ado, everyone, enjoy episode 2 of Rewind Room.
Hello and welcome back to the Rewind Room, everyone, the nostalgic podcast that takes you down memory lane. I'm Ramona, and with me is my amazing co-host and very dear friend, John.
How y'all doing, folks? It's been a little bit since we've been here. I'm so happy to be back recording another episode of Rewind Room. If you guys hear that I sound a little nasally, well, that's because, unfortunately, I have been battling a little cold this last week. Unfortunately, I was not doing that well last week, and I was wondering even if I was going to be able to come in and record today, but thankfully, the angels were on my side, and pretty much everything is cleared up except for a little nasal congestion, so if you hear that or hear me clear my throat, that is my valid excuse. So basically, just wanted to let you all know that. But otherwise, I'm doing amazing. I think we're doing great. And I'm so excited to be recording another episode with you, my friend.
Oh, yes. Well, today we're not doing a general deep dive as we have been these past couple of
Nope.
episodes. We're actually getting personal, and we're
Oh, yeah.
talking about the TV shows that shaped us, the ones that filled our Saturday mornings, kept us company after school, and left a lasting mark on who we are today as adults. These are our stories, our memories, and our favorite shows. I'll let John take it away with our first segment, but on what makes children's TV so nostalgic. Specifically, what made these shows we grew up on so magical that we can't help but be nostalgic.
Absolutely. When we look at children's television, especially today, we definitely see that it's a lot more, it's not really catered to a certain, to a masses of people. What I mean by that is when we look at children's shows nowadays, most of it is about, what does the animation look like? What kind of things are we putting out there? And when we look at the messaging that we're putting out there for kids as well, we're kind of looking at, um, are we putting messaging out there because we truly want what's best for kids, or because we think we know what's best for kids? And I think that's the
Hmm.
formula that's kind of used a lot today. Whereas what me and Ramona grew up with a lot more was, trying to understand that, everyone in their own way is special. Everyone in their own way is amazing, and has the opportunity, as well as the what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a little brain dead right now. The
Ability.
ability, that's, yeah, okay, ability will work. It's not necessarily what I was looking for, but yeah, the ability to become amazing people if they put their all into it, and if they just go out and try their best, which I have
I see.
realized, just by doing that, I have gotten fairly far in my life, yeah, I'll admit, it hasn't gotten me to be CEO of a company or anything, but it has gotten me pretty far in a lot of ways. So I think a lot of the messaging that children's shows had, was a lot more based on, trying to allow children to understand that everyone has potential. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh,
Potential
I
to
see.
become the best of who they can be, and everybody has potential. And I think that that's was the most important thing. So to me, I think what made children's TV so nostalgic was a lot of it was that memory of getting home after school, being able to go home and watch episodes of your favorite shows, and being able to, after you get home of a long day of work, for a few minutes before you start your homework, my folks would be fine if I wanted to watch an episode of Arthur, or if I wanted to watch an episode of Cyber Chase or something like that. They were more than okay with it. And it's just one of those things that, um because it came from those values, they're kind of like, okay, we'll let you do this, and then you can have a snack if you want. Then after it's over, get right on your homework. It was one of those kind of things. And the other thing too was, when I was very young, I was actually homeschooled. So for a little bit of my youth, so part of my education was television, watching, PBS, watching, Nickelodeon, watching a lot of these things. It was kind of some of my education tools. Not saying that that's what my entire education was comprised of, because obviously I still had to do, school lessons, and I was still learning how to read and write. I just did it at home, but at the same time, it was one of those things. And at the same time, after that, when I was at home, I was able to just, learn from the TV, in a sense. I guess you could put it that way too. And for years, I also did not have cable. So it wasn't until I think I was about 6 years old that we finally signed up for a direct TV package. But before then, we were relying completely on the rabbit ear. So the only station I got was PBS at the time. So that's
Okay.
basically how that kind of rolled around. I think that for me, that's what makes it so nostalgic. What about you?
Well, I grew up on both public television and cable television, like I
Hmm.
mentioned in the pilot episode. As a child, I never really had too many friends. I had maybe one or two friends at a time,
Same, likewise,
and
yeah.
a lot of that lasted like 10 to 15 years. So I never really had like a friend group or anything. And I also lived far away from people. I wasn't really taught how to socialize, or how to establish or maintain community outside of my immediate family. So I relied on these shows to basically show me how to be a person.
Yeah.
My parents worked what felt like 24 hours out of the day, 24/7. So TV was a huge part of my childhood and teenage life. Whether it was public TV or cable broadcasting, I know that many children like myself were sort of plopped in front of a TV, and that's what gave us an idea of what the outside world was, and sort of hinted at ways that we can start identifying ourselves, whether it was how we perceive ourselves as the hero, or as someone who's learning. And it's nostalgic because I know for a fact I am the way that I am right now because of those shows that I used to watch. Because not only did they comfort me as friends, they also they also taught me like teachers, and they also exuded this sort of message of love the way that a family does. So I think for a lot of kids that were, say, missing something or looking for more in life, were given it indirectly through these educational and entertainment based broadcastings. We grew up anticipating shows and specials that even today I see adults who created an entire personality based on these fixations brought on by these shows. So I would say that the the nostalgia factor of it is also a means of seeing how far we've come as adults. And I know for a fact I'm super nostalgic for these shows exactly because of that.
Absolutely, I have to agree with you as well. I didn't have a lot of friends, when I was growing up as well. And even when I was in school, I only maybe had that one or two friends that maybe I'd play with for a little while after school, but I didn't really have a dedicated friend group.
Yeah.
So, watching characters, on TV, those kind of became my friends, even though I know, they're fictional people, they're not real people, but you almost kind of form a connection with them in a way because, they're the friend group you long for, looking at Arthur and his pals, those are
Oh
the
yeah.
friends that you want to have. That's the group everyone I think desires, and the fact that you can kind of live that through a show, is something that says a lot. And I know I say Arthur a lot. You probably see the shirt, you probably see what's behind me, but that was like my big show, and there's so many other shows, that were out there that kids felt they could connect with, you know, whether it was, just something from PBS, whether it was something from Nickelodeon, whether it was something from the Disney Channel or any of those. I think every kid can say that that's me when they watch a show. And that's what allows them to have such a connection with the show. And that's how I think, when especially people like us didn't have friends, that's how we kind of formulated friendships in a way, even though, we,
Oh
we, we
yeah.
knew that these characters were not real. They could not come out of the TV and visit us. But
Yeah.
just having that little bit of time to be able to visit with somebody and get away from your world and immerse yourself in a whole nother world that does accept you, that does approve of you, and that does like you is something that's it's life changing. It's something that it makes you think a lot. But number two, I think a lot of it too is it makes you feel valued in a way.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
go.
a reward. It really is.
It is absolutely because it's kind of like it's one of those things, like you 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 try and make friends at school. They're gonna look at you and the first thing they're gonna judge you on is how do you look. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. As much as we wish it wasn't like that, that's kind of how it is. And if they don't perceive you as being cool or hip enough, they can turn you away. TV shows are not going to turn you away because they're
No.
basically saying, I'm here for you.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's what the most beautiful thing I think about any show is, regardless of if it's a children's show or a TV show you watch now.
I think it also says a lot about obviously current society, but
Sure.
also about our neighbors. Say, I went to a school that was, it was a Catholic school and it was predominantly white.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of the children's TV shows that I watched were about Black families or Latino families
Yeah.
or Asian American families. And through TV, I was actually shown diversity through these shows and through programs like, say, Mr. Rogers or the segment in Arthur where it shows the kids, the live action kids. What is that segment called?
A word from us kids.
Exactly, a word from us kids. I saw kids from different incomes. I saw kids from different cities and states, all, in the comfort of my own home. I didn't have to venture to the other side of town
Mhm.
to witness diversity. I could see it on my TV, even though it
Mhm.
wasn't readily accessible to me.
Exactly. And the cool thing about a show like, okay, we were mentioning Arthur, is, you have a mixed group of different ethnicities, backgrounds, and such,
Absolutely.
because, Arthur, is himself, and then you have characters that, you have Brain, who represents African Americans, he celebrates Kwanzaa. You have Francine, who's Jewish. She celebrates
Hmm.
Hanukkah,
Yeah.
and of course, Arthur, celebrates Christmas, and whatnot. But
You have
you
people
have
from
those different
various income statuses as well.
various income statuses. You have people who come from blended families. You even have
Hmm.
characters like Buster who come from a divorced family. He lives with his mother, and some he only gets to see his dad occasionally. And so you have a lot of those different things too. So it was so cool to see how diverse shows like that really were and made it so much more relatable to people like us and to
Yeah,
other children who probably face these very same things. I mean, because there's millions of children who live in divorced families and they only get to see their parents, one at a time for certain times,
absolutely.
and sometimes they only get to see one more time of the year than they get to see the other. You have,
Yeah.
kids who, probably are trying to understand their roots, and then they have a character like the Brain or Francine or somebody else they can relate to in the show, and so I think the fact that they created such a diverse background is amazing. Now, of course, we could talk about this for hours, but we'll definitely get into more Arthur when we get to the PBS section. But the reason we bring him up so much is because that was one of the shows that meant so much to me and Ramona growing
Oh,
up.
absolutely. I can tell you that I trust myself as an adult because of many of the moral lessons I learned on that specific show, just on that
Same,
one show.
same, absolutely.
No.
It's one of those shows that it touches something deep inside you, and I think that's what was so special about.
Exactly. Now, this time, this era that we lived in,
Yeah.
how did it play a role and shape the shows that we watched? Like, how did, say, the late '90s? I was born in '96, and you were born in '97.
Yes.
So, how did when we grew up? How did that shape what we watched?
Well, I think a lot of it was that era of not just television, but societal shift played a big role in it. And I think a lot of it is because, by that time, I think more people were starting to look more into how can we make more characters diverse and how can we speak to a larger audience? Because I think beforehand it was more about it was very lesson oriented. What's the lessons we can teach? And it wasn't thinking about a lot of those same factors. I mean, yes, you did have shows like 321 Contact, which had a diverse group of people teaching science, but at the same time, it wasn't thinking, how can we make this diverse group of people teach something of value? It was more, how can we get this message across? It was more, how can we get these lessons across? And I'm not saying that that's not important either. I
Okay.
think that's just as important. But I think when we get to the 90s, we're thinking of so many different things in that realm because that's when the era of shows like Arthur kick off, for instance. That's when
Mm-hmm.
shows like, Blue's Clues, Nickelodeon's Blue's Clues were kicking off. That's when a lot of these other shows, were kind of coming into the balance. And then you still had shows that came from older eras like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers that were still running at this time, but we're still also teaching the same lessons they have been teaching to previous generations, just to a new generation. So you had a large array of different kinds of shows. And at this time was kind of when cable was starting to take off as well. So now you have other networks that are trying to get in on this, but they're also trying to think, well, there's the educational shows, but what can we make that's fun for children? And I think really those were more about having fun being a kid and not being afraid to enjoy and express your youthful spirit really is what I think
Yeah.
those shows really brought out in us. And so I think it really shaped us in the sense that it said, you're going to grow up one day. And yes, you're going to need these lessons, and we're going to teach them to you now because these lessons are not just for now. They're going to be for your whole life. But at the same time, they're also saying, enjoy your time being a kid because once you grow up, you're not going to be a kid again. But you can
Yeah.
take some of that energy and still apply it to your adult life. And that's how you still have fun when you're an adult.
And off of your last point that you
Yeah.
made,
Yep.
it shaped how we as adults today view children's TV.
Oh,
If
sure.
you didn't have a good relationship, like, say, watching TV growing up, or say you weren't allowed to watch TV growing
Mhm.
up, or say it just wasn't of interest to you, you're probably going to have a very biased opinion, just as you would if you had a great relationship towards TV. Hence the reason why, you see people, so many people advocating for the continuation of public broadcasting and things like that,
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely. 100%.
had Arthur and PBS and Nickelodeon and all of those networks not affected us positively, I don't think we would care as much to keep them funded. Do you know what I mean? Because
100%.
they shaped who we are, it also, in a way, made it known that things like these, or things, resources like these, are an essential part of a developing child's life and mind. And a lot of the times people assume, oh, you know what, my kid grew up in front of a TV because it was a babysitter. Okay, passive babysitting, totally fine.
Mm.
That makes sense in the culture, the American culture that we currently live in and grew up in.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, like John was saying, these shows are what showed us how to be human, are what showed us how to love and how to be loved.
Yep.
So if we're learning that at such a young, impressionable age, it only makes sense that we continue to carry that love and admiration for these
Mm.
types of broadcastings.
Absolutely. You said it perfectly. I think had it not been for shows like this, I don't think it would shape us into the people we are now. Because, you look at children now and everybody has a smartphone, everybody has TikTok, everybody has all these things that are instant gratification, and I'm not saying that, it's 100% bad. I mean, I see the good that they do. There's so many influencers out there that need these mediums to get their voice heard. But at the same time, I think it was also kind of the idea of sit back, relax, and just live in the moment. Just
Mm,
take it one moment, 1 minute, one day, one step at a time. Kind of like that. You know, life is going to be tough and it will knock you down. But when you have these skills and when you have these lessons and when you have um these morals, you have these, and when you have these skills that you learn, you can make your life manageable. I think that's kind of what
yeah.
is getting across. Whereas I think when you kind of look at the instant gratification side of things, everybody wants something in a second because we're so used to that now. Whereas I feel like, a lot of these shows would help you just kind of understand, just kind of like, yeah, you'll get there. But right now, just take it a step at a time because it's like even the Blues Clues song, you can do anything you want to do if you use your mind and take a step at a time. I mean, it's something, it's just so simple as something like that can completely change your world and, make something that could be very terrible manageable. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and thanks to the era that we watched TV in, um, that era specifically uh, shaped everything about how you and I watch TV. I
Sure.
mean, most of the shows, it was the content, it was the pacing, it was the way we experienced them, either weekly or bi-weekly. And most importantly, like I said earlier, how it shaped us as adults. And as you were saying, when it comes to instant gratification, we had to literally wait a week to watch something. As a
Yeah,
kid, patience rarely exists. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
it felt like there was a shift not only in how network TV saw the importance of what they were doing, but it also spoke to the shift in culture for America, at least,
Mm.
because in the 90s, I think that's when it was super normalized for both parents to go work. So we
Yeah,
sort of had to rely, as kids and as parents, we had to rely on networks like these to sort of guide the children and guide us into what it means to be a person.
absolutely. And the cool thing was a lot of these shows catered to that dynamic.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
showed kids that had both of their parents working, like Arthur and the others, and even, um, just kind of looking at that whole thing, and you see the dad is a caterer and the mom's an accountant. They both work, and Arthur and his friends a lot of times have to find ways to
Entertain
kind of
themselves.
entertain themselves, and that's
Yeah.
why they have the friend group that they do. That's why they go to places like the Sugar Bowl.
The Sugar Bowl,
You
exactly.
can even take shows like, okay, I'm going to give you another one, Barney and Friends. I know that probably doesn't cater to that same dynamic, but I mean, you have a mentor figure in this purple dinosaur,
Yeah.
and I mean, yeah, he's hanging around with a group of kids, but really at the same time, he's that mentor figure for just everyday solutions, trying to get past certain things, growing up, trying to navigate, emotions and different things like that. And,
Yeah.
and that's why I bring up that example. I mean, you also have, Blue's Clues, where basically the whole house comes to life, and the only live person is Steve,
Yeah.
and but yeah, he's interacting with these different parts of his house, and in a sense, it's kind of showing you, how one kind of lives through their day. Even though these aren't alive, the only two that are truly alive are Steve and Blue, and of course, I know Blue's animated, but still, those are the only two, people. But at the same time, it's kind of showing you have this mentor figure in the sense of this person. You're solving everyday problems, and it's like you're starting with, trying to find three clues, but those three clues are going to turn into trying to solve equations, trying to solve just how am I going to get next week's groceries, student loans, stuff like that, and navigating through these things. So I think what these shows also did was provide a basis for many life skills that you're going to have to face in your future, but is
Oh,
doing it
absolutely.
at a pace that's manageable and understandable to a child. And
Yeah,
I think
well
that's what's
said.
important.
Think about even like say Dragon Tales.
Dragon
It
Tales, yeah.
sort of inspired children to, okay, you know what, mom and dad are working, mom and dad are busy. I'm going to be imaginative. I'm
Yes.
going to use my
I'm going
imagination.
to Dragonland.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of shows, yes, they try to teach you things about reality, but also children's shows that we grew up on also taught us to hone in on our imagination and creative thinking.
Yep.
It allowed us to be okay with dreaming and thinking of castles in the sky and dragons and hope and possibilities,
And it also,
it
oh, go ahead. No,
fostered
no.
that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut in on you.
No, no, no
No,
worries.
absolutely. It did foster a lot of that, but also it kind of made the world, it kind of made it to where, like, for a long time, dragons are seen as this scary, monster that exists in
Great point.
fantasy stories. And it kind of tells you that dragons are what you make them. All these things that you hear about in literature are what you make them. And if you want to make dragons your friends, make them your friends,
That's another
you
really
know?
great moral lesson that
You know.
totally went over my head.
Yeah, it's just something I thought of because it's kind of like, the reason I thought of that is the person who invented Dragon Tales actually was painting photos of friendly dragons, and his most infamous photo is of a dragon embracing a child. And and he's the guy who would go on to eventually make Dragon Tales, but that's the reason I thought of that at the same time. It's just kind of like it's what you make of it as well.
Absolutely.
Your imagination is so wide. You can make something that's scary and horrifying your best friend and your ally.
Yeah, absolutely. It can help you wrap your head around geopolitical things that are going on around in the world.
Yeah.
It can help you wrap your head around, small situations that you have at school, or it can even help you muster some courage to talk to that person or to do that thing
Yeah.
that you're stopping yourself from. Like these shows established a sense of hope for us kids.
Absolutely 100%, and I think the best way to kind of sum it all up in a sense is the era that we grew up, I think the reason it's so nostalgic is because it allowed us to truly think and it allowed us to truly express ourselves. It truly allowed
Absolutely.
us
As
to,
children,
as
as actual
children,
children.
and it basically, it didn't talk down to us like, you're this, you have to do this, you're a child, etc., etc. It basically spoke to us as though we're comprehensive. We understand. We're cognitive of everything that's going on around us, and we're going to treat you the way that you would like to be treated as an equal.
And
And
to add on that, for the nostalgia part, there's something to be said about how important it is to teach children to be children. There are
absolutely.
so many TikToks and Instagrams and I'm sure shows out there for
Mhm.
kids that, make them want to rush childhood and make them want to
Yeah,
be high schoolers and adults, make them want to wear makeup and have boyfriends and girlfriends
yeah,
and go to parties and things like that. A lot of the shows that you and I watched presently
yeah,
really contributed to how we saw being a child. Like now
100%.
every kid who's like 11 or 12
Yep.
wants like a $500 gaming console and makeup and labubus and all of these things. Like back in the day, these shows made us children because we were children.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it kind of was saying enjoy your childhood. And the
It-
reason that that's such a big thing and you look at it, you only, I think, really understand this when you actually grow up. And this is the reason I think we're talking about this so much is because, in all honesty, the thing is that when you're a kid, you want to grow up. It's natural because you're going to get there eventually. But when you become an adult, you start to see the things adults have to face, things you and me have to face every single day, you
oh
know?
yeah.
And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The majority of it isn't friendly or nice. Um, but the thing is with, these shows is that they allowed us, like you said, they allowed children to understand it's okay, be a child,
Yep.
play, have fun, get
Hmm.
dirty, run around, go ride your bikes, go get
Have that
that I
imaginary friend.
have that imaginary friend. Look for that mentor figure.
Yep.
Look for somebody you love and trust and make them the most important thing in your life because one day that will be gone. And
Oh
when it's
yeah.
gone, you're going to look back and be so grateful of this moment. Because, when I look back on these shows, I'm grateful for the lessons they taught me because to be honest with you, the majority of the lessons they taught me, I'm still using to this very day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to any parents
Excuse me.
listening, also recognize that your children are currently in the middle of their childhood.
Hmm.
They only have one childhood. They will always be adults after they turn 18, but they'll
Absolutely.
only have that small sliver of time to be a child. So, if they want to have some fun, if they want to act kooky or whatever because of a TV show, or if a TV show inspires them to do something new and different, love and appreciate that. Help them with it, support them because at the end of the day, you are also paving the way for the future adult that is going to pave the way for the future adults in that generation.
Absolutely. But kids also remember, make good choices as well.
Always, always. I don't
Make
think
good
there's a kid
choices.
show. Yeah, I don't think there's a kid show today that advocates for any sort of.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that a lot of these shows did. They also, showed, if you do bad things, you get consequences, and that's
Consequences.
what the thing I loved as well. Arthur got in trouble at times. He got grounded,
Hmm.
and it kind of
Yeah.
shows that, some people might look at it and be like, oh my these people, never get in trouble. They get to do what they want. And it's kind of like you look at Arthur, you look at some of these other shows, they do very well make the point that if you do misbehave, if you do wrong things, you will get consequences.
Yep. And I mean that's telling about how life is,
Yeah,
as an adult. You can't have an action without a consequence.
absolutely, 100%. You're right on
Yeah.
track with it. But I think that's pretty good. I mean, holy cow, we covered a lot about the nostalgia side of it. Let's move on to the next segment of cable networking. And the reason being is because in the late 90s, cable became such a big part of everyone's household. I mean, cable started coming in earlier, obviously, but is really when it took off with services like Dish Network, Direct TV, and a lot of those kind of services, Cox, high speed. Was in the early 2000s and the late 90s. And so that's kind of what we're going to start looking at. So Ramona, without further ado, I will let you take it away with this section.
So I actually spent, like I said earlier, most of my childhood and teenage years in front of a TV, and I could go on for days talking about all the shows that I watched and loved. But for the sake of timing on the podcast, I'm just gonna breeze over a couple of the shows that impacted me so much so to where I even rewatch them now as an adult. Because of how big of an impact and positive of an impact it gave me as a child. And the first network we're going to be talking about, or I'm going to be talking about right now, is Cartoon Network.
Oh
And
yeah.
a couple of the shows that I grew up that left a lasting impression on me are actually three. And then after that, I'm going to be talking about some honorable mentions that I didn't entirely grow up watching as a child, but I feel like I would have. Uh, loved to. I did watch them as a young teen, so I was still in a developing phase. But first off, the show that I want to start off with is Dexter's Laboratory. And man, I loved I loved this show. Well, I love all shows on this list, but this was iconic because it celebrated science and intelligence and creativity in a way that made being weird or the smart kid cool. You
Yeah.
know, it normalized being into school and being into things like that. And let's be honest, everyone who watched it wanted a secret laboratory. Let's
Mhm.
be honest.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And now, did you watch Dexter's Laboratory, my friend?
Very sparingly. Actually, I'll tell you what turned me on to Dexter's Laboratory a little later was an episode of Arthur titled The Contest. And basically, in that episode, I'll just be very brief. The kids enter a contest to tell a story for a TV show that they want, and basically, they pay homage to so many of the popular cartoon shows of the time. And one of the shows they paid tribute to with that was Dexter's Laboratory in a segment where Brain invents a potion that grows hair on everything that he puts it on.
Oh.
And they did it in the style of a Dexter's Laboratory style thing. But aside from that, I only saw little glimpses here and there. So Dexter's Laboratory was not one I was terribly familiar with. I mean, I watched little bits and pieces of it. I knew the premise, but wasn't something I really grew up with.
No, yeah, I think that Dexter's Laboratory, if you watched it, you loved it. You know, it wasn't one of those shows that every single person had playing at the time, but I know for a fact that it inspired me to just be okay with liking school. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
school is cool, and that's where I learned it from. Now, a second show that actually impacted me in a different way is Courage the Cowardly Dog. And now
Okay.
this show, it stood out because it mixed fear, humor, and a little bit of heart, teaching us about bravery and about acting despite being afraid, conquering our fears. It tapped into also childhood anxieties.
Hmm.
And even upon rewatching as an adult, some of these things are actually even scary themes for adults. So I
Oh my
understand why a
gosh, yeah.
lot of people, didn't watch Courage the Cowardly Dog, but you tackled with themes such as the unknown, isolation, and being misunderstood, something that a lot of normal children's TV shows sort of tried to stray away from.
Oh yeah.
It made topics like these a lot less scary through empathy and surreal storytelling and animation. For me personally, it was more than just a cartoon because it shaped my own emotional resilience. It taught me personally how to protect what I love, whether it be my family, my friends, my ideologies, whatever. No matter how strange or terrifying the world may be, it
Hmm.
taught me to sort of just continue being myself. And as the courage always would say, oh, the things I do for love,
Yeah.
because love requires sacrifice, and that's where I first learned that.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you look at Courage's whole backstory, it's one of the most tragic, and really he has to learn how to love again because he lost the only two people he ever truly loved.
100%.
And, it really was kind of that show that was kind of about, learning to kind of love again and learning to trust again, after you've been so badly hurt and betrayed, and, something that tragic as losing your parents regardless of the circumstances, is going to be tragic for anyone, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I think the idea of Courage being adopted by somebody who does care about him, and even though her husband, well, he's a little morally gray at times,
Oh,
but
Eustace.
Eustace, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you can tell he cares, but he has a weird way of showing it. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You stupid dog, you made me look bad.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But I think the whole concept of learning to love and trust again after you've been through a traumatic experience is something that Courage really expressed, I think, in such a well way.
Yeah, there are a couple of episodes that stand out to me. I'm not going to delve deep into them, but there's this one specific episode where there's a bell chimer and he's looking for a place to stay in the rain, and they live in the middle of nowhere, and that's actually the name of the town that they live in. And he goes door to door, and everyone's rejecting him because he is not conventionally attractive.
Yeah.
And do you know who houses him? Courage does,
Yep.
because Courage taught us in that episode that it doesn't matter what you look like. We should not judge a book by its cover.
Exactly, 100%. And that's something a lot of kids shows really were striving for at that era,
Yeah, yeah,
acceptance of people, not because of who they are on the outside, but because of who they are on the inside, and I think that
yeah.
was a big concept because for so many years, many shows played into this concept that you had to look a certain way, that you had to be a certain way. And by the time you reach the 90s, it was trying to express that it doesn't matter about any of that. Just appreciate people for who they are.
And on that exact note, thank you for pretty much segueing me to my
Oh, you're
third
welcome. I got you.
option, or my third choice is the Powerpuff Girls. Now, this show in itself was very powerful, I can say, and it's actually still a pretty good show when it comes down to the writing, upon rewatching as an adult. But it meant representation for young girls. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, there are a lot of shows for young girls and whatnot. Yes, but also this show in the 90s showed young girls that you can be cute and tough and smart and heroic all at once. You didn't have to be a tomboy to be tough. That you
Oh
could
yeah.
be a feminine girl and be tough. And I feel like there are a lot of shows that nowadays that show that, but at the time lacked that because it gave us characters who fought villains while still navigating what it meant to be a child and also what it meant to be an autonomous person. There are many moral implications regarding the professor letting the girls go fight crime. But
Hmm.
in that in itself, it's showing that the show represents the children as autonomous beings and not extensions of their parents, which I think is vital to creating a child's sense of self. And I think shows like Dexter's Laboratory, Courage the Cowardly Dog,
Yep.
and Powerpuff Girls, to name a few, these shows actually catalyzed for many kids a spark in them that allowed them to fully be themselves or feel like they could in a safe space. Now, going off of those, I just wanted to ask if you, by any chance, watched either Courage the Cowardly Dog or Powerpuff Girls, and if you did, what your thoughts were.
Never seen Powerpuff Girls. I'm gonna be honest on that one. Courage the Cowardly Dog, I saw occasionally. I know his whole backstory mostly, because I've seen that was such a big episode when that aired. When they showed Courage's whole story of how he became who he was and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I did see the episode that you were talking about when Dod's going door to door, and then Courage takes him in at the end. That was a really powerful episode, I thought it was really good, to kind of show that whole nurturing and nature side. Other than that, I didn't really watch a whole lot of Courage the Cowardly Dog because
That's fair.
I think for me, it was a little bit too, for lack of a better term, dark compared to a lot of the shows I was used to. And I could say probably the same for, Dexter's Laboratory, even though that was very kid oriented, even though it was a
I
lot
see.
more lighthearted than Courage the Cowardly Dog. I think just for me at the time growing up, I was kind of a sensitive kid. So, that's probably one of the reasons I stuck more with the lighthearted, more children's friendly shows until I got a little bit older. And then I started getting
Yeah.
into more darker shows.
Oh yeah, I would say actually all three of these shows are probably best watched from the ages of like 7 to maybe 11. I think that's
Absolutely.
peak time. I don't really see young children watching these just because a lot of the themes would definitely go over their heads. But I did want to give some honorable mentions before I pass on the list to you for Cartoon Network.
Sure.
And some of those honorable mentions are the regular show because it captured the absurdity of early adulthood, reminding us as children how weird, nostalgic, and hilarious the transition from youth to adulthood and responsibility can be. Lego Ninjago and Yu-Gi-Oh! For me
Yeah.
personally, combined action, loyalty, and teamwork in a way that sparked imagination,
Re-
and it showed us strength in unity and personal growth. And then lastly, Over the Garden Wall. And
uh,
this is definitely one of those niche titles that I definitely recommend even adults watching because it is such a beautiful show because it's hauntingly beautiful and it teaches us about identity, redemption, all through eerie storytelling and timeless animation. And I feel like you can talk about that in a way for every single one of these shows that I just listed. In a way, they're all hauntingly beautiful, and all of them, in a way, identify with a diverse group of children.
100%, and actually I didn't know Yu-Gi-Oh aired on Cartoon Network.
Well, it some of the rights for reruns were aired on
Okay,
there,
because
but I believe it.
I
Oh, go
remember
ahead.
it being on Fox Kids when it
Yeah,
first was
so
airing.
I've watched it actually on WB Kids, Fox Kids, and on Cartoon Network.
Wow. So all
S-
three of them picked up the rights, it seems like. And Fox Kids and
exactly,
WB Kids, I think, were kind of subsidiaries of each other because they were kind of the same
exactly.
thing in one,
Yeah.
even though they were owned by two different companies.
Absolutely. So you're going to see a lot of overlap for these shows in different networks because they were either acquired or written over through contract or transferred over through contract.
100%. Yeah, well, it was really cool. So for Cartoon Network, you already covered Dexter's Laboratory pretty well, so I think I'll stick with that. The other show I have for Cartoon Network is Ed, Ed and Eddie and the Fairly Odd Parents. Now, I am aware Fairly Odd Parents started as a Nickelodeon show, but it
Mm.
eventually moved to Cartoon Network years later, and that's where I first started to experience Fairly Odd Parents. So Ed, Ed and Eddie was kind of an interesting show. You have these three kids. They're schemers. They're always getting into trouble, and it's one of those things where it's kind of like they basically kind of almost kind of have to learn something, and you have different kinds of people in there. You have Ed, who's kind of dim-witted. He's strong, but yet he's kind. You have Ed with two D's or the double D. He's kind of the smart one, but yet he's the neat freak. He's kind of this character, who is probably the only one who has any kind of sense, I guess you could say. He's the most smart. And then you have Eddie, who's probably the most devious, and he's the quick-tempered. And all three of these kids are, they're schemers, they're getting into trouble and a lot of different things. But whenever they try to do something, most of the times problems always ensure and
Mhm.
their plans usually end in failure. And it's kind of the same with the Fairly Odd Parents as well. You have this kid who he's not really treated well by his family. I think he's abused even by, his babysitter. He's kind of neglected by his parents. And he has these two godparents, fairy godparents, Cosmo and Wanda, and basically their whole thing is that they're fairies and can grant any wish he wants. But usually, he tries to use it to improve his life, and it ends up backfiring. Like same with Ed, Ed, and Eddie. And usually, it comes to he has to face the problem himself. And the thing I liked about both of those shows is it showed that, that as mischievous as you may be as a child, as much as you might try and want to change the situation that you're in, sometimes you have to find a way to be able to face it rather than trying to run away from it or change it. And that's one of the biggest things I really liked with those two shows is it really kind of showed that, as a kid, it's not ever a bad thing to have to face your problems and to have to go head on with whatever you're dealing with because oftentimes in life, it's easy to want to run away from a problem, but it's a whole nother thing to face it. And that's what these shows both, I feel, really were trying to express with how they brought along education with entertainment as well.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with this sentiment, absolutely. But I was wondering when on Cartoon Network you watched it because the show Fairly Odd Parents was specifically signed to Nickelodeon by Butch Hartman.
So here's what happened. So Nickelodeon had Fairly Odd Parents for many years, and they
No,
still do.
they yeah, okay, I was gonna
They
say that,
still
yeah.
do. But in, I think it was 2009 or 10, they loaned it out to Cartoon Network to broadcast.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't
But
know that. Okay.
okay, but here's the thing. I mostly saw it on Cartoon Network, which is why I listed it as a Cartoon Network show that I saw.
That's interesting. Okay. Okay.
But
Because
yes, I am aware that
yeah.
it's a Nickelodeon show.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was really interesting, because I think it was mostly when they started doing reruns is when they loaned it out to Cartoon Network.
Oh, okay.
And whatnot. But yes, Fairly Odd Parents was originally a Nickelodeon show, and whenever new episodes would air, they would air on Nickelodeon. So that's
I
one of
see.
the big things. But they would occasionally cross over is what would
Oh, very
happen.
cool. Very cool. What about Fox Kids? Do you remember anything about Fox Kids?
Fox Kids. Yeah, I definitely watched some shows from Fox Kids. There was Goosebumps, which I watched.
Ooh, ooh.
Goosebumps was fun. I read the books as kids. I
Oh
loved
yeah.
the show. Unfortunately, they did not get to tackle, I don't think, every book on the show, but they tackled a good majority of the books.
Yeah.
The Haunted Mask, Say Cheese and Die, Monster Blood. They covered so many of the iconic books on there, and those were some of my favorites with Goosebumps.
Mm.
I also was a big fan of Batman the Animated Series, which
Oh yeah.
I know we're kind of cheating because Batman the Animated Series did start long before both of us were born, but I mean, hey, that show aired clear up to the end of the 90s,
Yeah.
basically. That
And we
was,
grew up on it too.
and we grew up on it as well. And then the other one was, you mentioned it earlier, was Yu-Gi-Oh! That was another show I watched a lot on Fox Kids.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Yo,
Yep.
yo. Yeah, I mentioned to John actually before we started recording that I actually watched Yu-Gi-Oh! On a couple of networks. I watched it on WB Kids, Fox Kids, and on Cartoon Network too.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's pretty, yeah, that's crazy to think that aired across those three. But yeah, no, Goosebumps was fun because um, when you look at the books on the covers, you think it's gonna be some scary story, but the thing that was always fun about Goosebumps was it was always fun. It
It
was a
was always
fun,
fun.
it was a fun scary, it wasn't scary like for horror's sake, like a Stephen King novel would be. It was fun, and whenever you
Yeah.
got into the situations, you got to just kind of let loose and have your mischievous side kind of take over while also still somewhat learning lessons at the same time. I mean, this one wasn't really out to teach lessons. This one was mostly for fun. Let's be real.
Oh yeah. And there were some lessons, but they were so subtle that it wasn't at the forefront of why we
Ex
loved the show. You know,
exactly.
Goosebumps was one of those shows that was like the Twilight Zone dialed down. In a way, a reflection of our society and a reflection of our hopes and anxieties and like
That,
eh, eh, uh,
mhm.
hopes and anxieties done in a way that mimics, like I said, the Twilight Zone.
Absolutely. You said it absolutely perfectly. Now, the cool thing about Goosebumps as well is like you said, it felt like almost like the Twilight Zone for kids. It's
Hmm.
something like, you have a situation going on, then something really gnarly or crazy happens, and then at the end you kind of almost, but unlike the Twilight Zone, it doesn't come across with this moral message at the end where the characters
No.
always speak to you, but at the same time, it usually comes across kind of in a similar light with somebody learning something, you
Oh
know?
yeah, and arguably it also sort of set the stage for future horror fans. I know for a fact that I'm a horror fanatic because of stories and books and shows like Goosebumps.
Absolutely, and Goosebumps really, I think, formulated my love for more darker, macabre
Oh yeah.
storytelling, and I'm I've always been a big fan of darker stories, I think, and while I still love my light stuff, it's something that came out of me as I started to grow up, but
Yeah.
um I really like stories that have more of a darker edge or more of a grittier, narrow narration style, and I think Goosebumps
Yeah.
is what really kind of helped formulate that in me. Whether it was reading the books as kids, those are the only books that got me to pass AR tests at times.
That and the Magic
You
Tree House
remember
for
those
me.
tests?
Oh yes, it
Yeah.
was the Magic Tree House for me. That's for sure.
Magic Tree House was another one.
Yeah.
But Goosebumps was one of the few.
Oh, absolutely.
The thing with the show that was cool was, it wasn't, it's like, it was episodic, but it always covered one of the different books, which I thought was cool. And, when
Yeah.
you're a kid, Goosebumps feels like a novel. When you read it now, Goosebumps is short, you
Yeah.
know? And that's what the episodes I feel like did really well was, one of my favorite episodes was Monster Blood. And I think a lot of the reason why I like that episode is because, I was always into weird, kind of kooky stuff. And that episode, with getting into something that you're not supposed to, and with Evan finding the jar marked Monster Blood, and they start messing with it, and then they realize it starts expanding. It's almost like Gremlins, except with a
Mm,
liquid in a sense, which
mm-hmm.
I thought was kind of interesting. Another one was Say Cheese and Die. I remember I actually thought that was a funny episode, despite a lot of the dark things that were happening. There were times on this show I was laughing hard at some of the supposedly supposed to be scary stuff.
Yeah, one episode comes to mind, which is my personal favorite. Now, I watch a handful of episodes every year for Halloween, and I've been doing that since I was 11, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to stop that. But one of the
Good.
episodes that I watch every single year is Be Careful What You Wish For. And it
Mm,
basically
I
follows
forgot
this
about this
girl.
episode.
Yeah, it follows this girl who meets this like mystic woman, and then, long story short, she gets a bunch of wishes, and then she ends up regretting these wishes because, like the title says, be careful what you wish for. And there's a specific scene where she's playing basketball. She's not the most popular. She actually really sucks at basketball. And then people are pissing her off, and she goes, I wish everyone would just buzz off. And
Mm,
everyone turns into flies.
yep.
You have kooky little instances like that that are on one hand moral lessons, but on the other hand, the execution of them is more lighthearted, as you say.
Exactly, yeah, and half of the time, what's supposed to be scary, I ended up laughing at just because it's so
Exactly.
ridiculous, and oftentimes the reactions are so exaggerated, it's hard to take them seriously, even for a kid and
100%.
whatnot. So, Goosebumps was one. Another big one I think that we can both talk about is Batman the Animated Series. That
Oh,
was huge.
100%. Oh, yeah.
Um, I always remember Batman the Animated Series. I remember, Kevin Conroy, rest in peace,
Oh, yes. Rest
is
in
one
peace to a
of
legend.
my favorite Batmans, I think, out there, aside from, of course, the more live action ones. But the thing that Kevin Conroy, I feel, brought was a sense of both that side of Batman that we don't really always get to see, because the thing is in the movies and in the comics, Batman's this very kind of one-dimensional person, but I feel like in the animated series you got to see more of kind of a human side of not just Bruce Wayne, but of Batman himself, you
Yeah.
know?
I think the way that Batman has been portrayed throughout different mediums has really impacted how we are affected by the certain either show or TV show we watch. I mean, you think of the 1960s Adam West show; it's more lighthearted, it's more comical, it's
Yes.
more family oriented, and then you go maybe 30 years 30 to 40 years after that, and here you have a very dark undertone to a very noir-esque
Mm.
Batman. You see a side of him that you really only saw hinted through Tim Burton's live action, and through
Yeah.
some of the comics.
I think Tim Burton's live action had that film not been made, I don't think you would have Batman the Animated Series, to be honest with you.
And arguably, without Batman the animated series, we wouldn't have the Nolan Batmans, or
No.
even the way that the DCEU has portrayed Batman in the past.
Or even Robert Pattinson's most recent iteration of
Exactly.
Batman,
Exactly.
and the thing that was cool about Batman the Animated Series was, for one, I loved the direction that they took every character. But two, I like the fact that they mixed dark um, storytelling with values that children can understand. I
Oh,
thought that was really
absolutely.
cool, but they didn't do it in a straightforward way. Like Goosebumps, it was always kind of in the subtext. It was always kind of in the background, but
Yeah,
yet it came across so clear when you
absolutely.
watched it. And funny enough, some of these lessons come from how Batman handles each situation. And sometimes it's the villains even that are teaching him some of these lessons. Not necessarily saying Batman do this, but how he handles the situation, how things go. And he realizes that some of these things are probably, kind of true when it comes down to the core of it, that some of the things that they might say or some of the things they might do or some of the ways he handled, whatever situation with the Joker or with Harley Quinn or any of these other the Penguin or any of these other characters.
Absolutely. It definitely allowed for children to have somewhat of a obviously childlike understanding of human psychology. So many themes within the Batman animated series were arguably adult oriented themes that were
Sure.
in a way watered down so that kids could sort of wrap their heads around say crime and the government and self-doubt, and one of the biggest themes is losing your parents.
Yeah. Absolutely, I mean, well, that's not only a big part of Bruce Wayne's story, but I mean, they really kind of touch upon it in the
Oh
animated
yeah.
series. Whereas in a lot of the comics and a lot of the films, it's like his parents die. Okay, he's an adult. Now I'm going to become Batman, and that's going to be
Yeah.
everything,
And
you know?
and in the comics and the shows prior, he's like this noble moral ground. He's on this noble moral ground where, you can tell he is the hero, but the animated series starts blurring that line to where we even question some of the things that Batman does.
100%, and I think that that's another thing they did well, the fact that, Batman is sometimes willing to do things that may be morally wrong, but at the same time, he feels he's doing it for a greater purpose. But it also shows are sometimes the consequences of doing a good thing, a bad thing for a good reason. At times what can come out of that, and just because you might do something good, is it going to fully solve the whole problem? And I think that that's another
Absolutely.
thing that really presented. Now, one other thing I got to get in here before I move to my last show, we got to give some cred to Mark Hamill as the voice of the Joker.
The
I mean,
only true voice of the Joker. Let's be honest, people.
yeah, the only true voice of the Joker. I know a lot of you are probably going to say we're not talking live action. A lot of you are probably going to try and say Heath Ledger, whatnot. We're only talking voice. We're only talking
Yeah,
animated. And there's a reason why Mark Hamill was the voice of the Joker, even through the Batman Arkham series
video
video
games,
games,
yeah.
is because he brought something to the voice of the Joker that nobody else has really ever brought before. Because, I mean, before this, you only had two variations of the Joker before this. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, you had the comics, but the Joker for the longest time was just seen as this dude who had maybe an acid flower and a dude who had, these jokingly props that could go deadly, razor cutting playing cards and stuff like that. Mark Hamill's Joker actually feels and sounds like a psychopath.
Yeah, he made it maniacal, and he definitely brought the psychotic nature of the Joker that we know now to life.
Exactly. And I will never forget the first time I heard that laugh. That was one of the greatest
Mm,
things I ever heard. Also, one of his greatest puns I remember from the show was I forget what it was. It was the Penguin, the Joker, and Harvey Dent trying to purchase something at an auction that they think is going to be able to move to lure Batman into some kind of trap. I can't remember the whole thing exactly. But this is after Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face. And um Joker comes walking in saying, that he wants this thing, and Harvey gets right in his face. And, in Batman the Animated Series, Harvey Dent was not just this person who was speaking just for these things. Harvey Dent was that in your face district attorney who becomes a maniacal villain, and it really portrayed that well. And he gets in his face, he goes, "Get out of my face, clown!" And Joker just looks at me and goes, "Which one?" Because Two-Face. And it was perfect. And from what I understand, I think Mark Hamill might have just played that off the cuff.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So that was really cool. But Batman the Animated Series, one of my all-time favorites.
Oh yeah, same, same.
For sure, absolutely. And then the last one I have is Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah.
was a favorite of mine growing up. I will admit, I think I was more of a Yu-Gi-Oh guy than a Pokemon guy. Not that I didn't collect and have
Me
Pokemon,
too.
but don't get me wrong, I like Pokemon too. But I think Yu-Gi-Oh was just more kind of, I guess, in a sense, relatable in a sense
Yeah.
to who I was. I will admit, I rooted for the bad guy in that show a lot. I rooted for Kaiba most of the time.
Really? I always voted for or rooted for Maximilian Pegasus.
Oh shoot, you went even higher than I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I loved Kaiba too though.
Kaiba I don't even really see as a bad dude. He's just a snobbish billionaire who wants to make his mark as the number one, and the only reason he doesn't
Yeah.
like Yugi is because he knows Yugi's better than him at dueling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise,
Um
they'd probably be allies. I mean, they have allied plenty of times throughout the show.
Many times, yeah, absolutely. I can say the same when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh versus Pokemon. I loved Pokemon. I watched Indigo League like no other. I even have a binder full of old Pokemon cards, but there's
Mhm.
something about Yu-Gi-Oh that just attracted outcast kids. I just feel like it was one of those shows that, not everyone watched, whereas
Yeah.
more people knew about Pokemon than Yu-Gi-Oh, in my life at least at the time.
Absolutely. Yu-Gi-Oh was just that one show that, I think it was I had the cards. I dueled with my friends, and I think
Same.
I
I have them back here actually.
nice, nice. I think I have my deck around here somewhere as well. I'll have to
Yeah.
duel you one of these days.
I know,
Um
right?
yeah, we'll have to duel for sure. But I always remember, I think the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh was it was more simpler for me to understand than Pokemon's.
Me too,
Um
yeah.
the thing because I mean, with Yu-Gi-Oh it's just, monster cards, spell cards, trap cards,
Yeah.
With Yu-Gi-Oh you have or with Pokemon you have so many iterations, you have
Energy cards,
you have
yeah.
energy cards, you have
Yeah.
you have all these different characters. I mean, I know the characters, of course, because I mean, I
Yeah.
like I said, I watched the show, but like, I mean, at the same time, Yu-Gi-Oh was just so much easier for me to follow, and I think I liked the darker aspect that Yu-Gi-Oh brought versus the
Same.
more lighthearted version that Pokemon brought.
The art on the cards for Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh, they were
Insane.
incredible.
Exodia, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, even the Dark Magician, the animation for those
Oh,
or the artwork, insane.
well, there's a reason that those were some of the most coveted cards
Hmm.
in the whole world, I
Yeah.
mean, do you know how many people went out to buy Seto's deck just because they wanted a Blue Eyes White Dragon and would buy three of those sets just to have three Blue Eyes White Dragons?
Oh, well, I was one of those kids that unfortunately never organically found a Blue Eyes White Dragon.
You never found one? I only have a Spanish
No.
one.
A Spanish one, that's funny.
Yeah, I'll have to show that to you
Yeah,
one
please
of these
do.
days for sure. But Yu-Gi-Oh was just so fun. Like I said, I loved the characters. I think that there's a stronger bond there with, Yugi, Joey, Taya, and what's the last guy's name? I forget. Tristan.
Oh yeah, Tristan.
Yeah, and it was so cool just watching that. Of course, Seto Kaiba is probably my favorite character. I love his
Same.
one-liners. I love his one-liners
Oh yeah.
is his thing. One of my favorite lines, Mokuba, what do I always tell you? If you don't get him the first time, blast him with your blue eyes white dragon.
Now, are you a Yugi fan or a Yami Yugi fan?
Yami Yugi, 100%.
Yami Yugi 100%.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I was
don't get me wrong, Yugi is cool, but when he transforms into Yami Yugi, he just becomes this badass character,
and I
that you
think that's
don't.
what also appealed to kids like us. You
Yeah,
have this really badass, impenetrable persona that is inside you that you have to like unlock and channel to basically
100%.
lock in.
100%. Yeah, I 100% agree with you there for sure. What about you? Were there any other shows you grew up with Fox Kids aside from some of the ones we've mentioned?
So you glossed perfectly over Goosebumps. Like I said before, it was a cherished show that I even to this day still watch, so I won't go into that. But on the same note as Batman the Animated Series, I grew up loving and obsessing over Spider-Man the
I'm
Animated
so
Series.
sad I never went to
Oh.
Spider-Man.
I
I'm aware
have
that
it on VHS over here.
nice. I'm watching it currently on Disney Plus, and I love it. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, I
yeah.
didn't grow up with it, which is why I'm turning the reins over to you on this one.
Yeah, you have action, emotion, awesome music, and moral conflict. What? It really taught me the true importance of with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah,
And arguably, I feel like it was the first time the world saw Spider-Man and Peter Parker as more than just a web swinging cartoon slash comic hero. It definitely made the mood a little bit darker because without the animated series, we probably wouldn't have had the dark undertones that Sam Raimi brought to the screen with Tobey Maguire. And then onwards with the whole Sony universe, and then continuing that with the Marvel universe. Like, where would
yeah,
we, how would we, excuse me, see
you're
Spider-Man
good.
now without that movie? Or without that show,
Yeah, yeah,
excuse me.
yeah.
With
No, I know what
the
you mean.
animated series was so great. It had such great episodes, ranging from Peter's own backstory to helping Aunt May pay the bills to even showing a young child that the world is worth trusting, and also helping low income people understand that he is there not only for, everyone living on the high rises in New York City, but he's also your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man
Sure.
from all walks of life to who you would anticipate being saved. One of the biggest shows in my life that impacted me to this day is Spider-Man the Animated Series. Now, I do want to give a couple of honorable mentions to uh, like say the Fox Kids that were also done through Disney acquisitions, and some of those are shows like Recess. I'm sure a lot of you guys grew up with that.
Recess.
Yeah, in a way, it romanticized the mundane rituals of school life and friendships and brought it to the screen for us. I remember laughing my head off to a lot of the themes in Recess, and then for on the other on another note, we have American Dragon Jake Long, which to me was such a beautiful introduction to Asian American representation, something that you didn't really see. I didn't really see growing up, except for this show and like maybe a handful of others, because
Mm,
these shows are blending not only teenage struggles but children's struggles with magical adventures and making it unique so that we as kids see our heroes try to balance life, try to work through their identity, and teach us about responsibility. Uh,
nice. Yeah.
so when it comes to Fox Kids, Batman the Animated Series, like you said, Goosebumps, and Spider Man.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think Fox Kids was just one of those that, it was impressive. It had an amazing run, and they had an array of just amazing shows,
Oh,
for
yeah.
the young people. And they went from everything from adapting comic books and books to having their own shows or bringing shows from other countries over here,
Yeah.
which I thought was cool. Like Yu-Gi-Oh, for instance. Yu-Gi-Oh is, a Japanese anime that was brought over, to the United
Hmm.
States, and, adapting. Spider-Man is another comic that was adapted, and then they had their own original programming, like you said, with Recess, and shows like that. And I think that that's really cool. With that, the next two, I'm going to admit, I do not have a lot of experience with due to the fact that I didn't watch a lot of shows on them and or they just didn't pique my interest when I was younger. So rather than try to fill this time, I'm going to let Ramona talk about this since you actually grew up with these next two channels that we're about to cover.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna add a third channel, and it's gonna be WB Kids because I think I remember you saying you didn't really delve too much into
Oh, WB
WBA
Kids,
Kids.
no, I did not do
Yeah,
a whole
yeah.
lot with.
So for WB Kids, since the list is a little bit longer than say Fox and Cartoon Network, I'm just going to be naming them. I'm not going to be talking about them. But Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, Static Shock, Jackie Chan Adventures, Teen Titans, Scooby Doo, Where Are You, and Crypto the Dog. Every single one of those shows has left a lasting impression on me, and a lot of them geared towards the hero trope, so you can imagine why. But the two channels that I'm going to be discussing a little bit more in depth are Disney Channel slash Playhouse Disney and Nickelodeon, and then like the off broadcasting channels that also allowed for their shows to be acquired by Nickelodeon. But I'm going to start off with Disney Channel. And John, you let me know if you watched any of these, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
So the first one is The Proud Family. For me personally, it was groundbreaking because it portrayed a Black animated family. And I didn't really see that growing up. The only other exception to that is Fat Albert and the gang. And it navigates through a lot of everyday life through humor and scenarios that I personally related to in my own Latino family. So it was definitely a place for POC representation, reflection of family and culture too. Another one that was groundbreaking for me is That's So Raven. Um, Personally, it was a hilarious take on what I personally thought high school would be like. Unfortunately, it was not like that for me. It combined comedy with unique twist. And funny enough, I actually did a report on its impact on me in college. I talked about the lasting effects and impressions of the show, along with the moral implications of certain episodes, many of which end with a necessary theme, a heavy and necessary theme, some including racism, entrepreneurship, fat shaming, popularity, and money. And a lot of these themes that you wouldn't assume were in children's shows, but That's So Raven definitely um um definitely what am I trying to say? It went against the grain and totally identified itself as its own thing compared to its potential predecessors.
Okay.
Now, one option that, or one, excuse me, one from the list that I'm actually going to be reading right now, you actually have watched, and I know this for a fact, and it's
Okay.
Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yes, that is one I have watched.
What did you think about that?
I thought it was a great show. It tackled just everyday um problems, just everything from, fighting with your siblings, with the characters fighting with each other, to, learning how to do ABCs, to learning how to use the potty, to just so many different um life things that children go through, and it was through the advent of a friendly bear and his household companions. you know
Yep,
and
yep.
it was just a lot of fun. I remember it was just, it was lighthearted, it was down to earth. I always remember Bear, the first thing you'd walk in, he'd be like, "What's that smell?" Like he's,
With his
yeah, with his
nose.
nose, and he gets right up to
Yeah,
the camera. "It's you." And then
yeah.
he takes a big sniff of it. There's one that I will never forget. Um as an adult, you'll hear this very differently. There's one where Bear is sniffing, and he sniffs into the camera and he goes, "Tell me, did you lay in the grass today? Because you smell like grass." And
Oh my gosh.
and I just always thought, what if somebody now as an adult messed around with that and held a joint up to their television? It wouldn't surprise me if that's happened.
I'm sure it has, if not on TikTok, if on Vine or something like that. That would
I
be
gotta look that
hilarious.
up. I gotta know if that exists.
Oh my
But
gosh.
anyways, on back on the note, Bear in the Big Blue House was a fun show. Most of the Bear in the Big Blue House I watched were on VHS.
Okay.
But they still had the Disney logo on it, because it was a
Mm.
Disney Channel show. Um, it was in collaboration, of course, with Jim Henson, because Jim Henson, again, with the puppets and with a lot of the different
Oh yeah.
categories. I think Jim Henson by himself by this point had passed away, but his company was
I see.
still. was still in effect, and they're still around to this day. As company Jim Henson Productions, but
Ooh,
I think
okay.
now they're under the Sesame Workhouse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because
I know for a fact that the
or Sesame
puppets
Workshop.
I know for a fact that the puppets definitely provided a comforting presence for me as a kid.
Same.
Definitely remember the gentle lessons, the catchy songs, and the characters like, say, Luna.
Oh, that was my favorite part of every episode. When you hear that guitar interlude coming in, you're like, "Oh, we're gonna go visit Luna." And
Exactly,
then it
exactly.
was kind of funny how, Bear just goes over his whole day with Luna. They sing the goodbye song. One of the most memorable goodbye song episodes was there's one where they're doing a camp out and they actually bring the entire cast and crew out to sing the goodbye song. All
Whoa,
the puppets and Luna and everybody's there. And the reason they did this is they thought they were going to get canceled. So they did this
whoa.
thinking this is going to be it. And it feels like a finale, it feels like a series finale. They bring everybody out to sing the song. But of course, Bear in the Big Blue House did get picked up for another season, thankfully.
Oh man, that's a gut punch. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Part of me wishes that they would have just redid that for the series finale, but unfortunately, I think by
Yeah.
that point they didn't realize that they were going to go out. Because I'm like,
No,
I'm
that's
like,
fair.
I'm like, you went out so hard, but you did it a little too early, is the thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They definitely counted their chickens before they hatched.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, the rest of those shows I'm not the most familiar with. Like, okay, with Disney Channel, for instance, that was something I only saw when I would go to, like, let's say I went to a friend's house and they had like a little sister or little brother, for instance, and they were sitting on the couch, maybe watching That's So Raven, Hannah Montana, Sweet Life, stuff like that. Those are the only times I get glimpses of Disney. And then sometimes if I just didn't have anything to do, I plop down next to them, have a piece, have some popcorn, and just what are we watching?
Yeah, yeah. I would say Disney definitely took up a huge chunk of my uh TV viewing time. But like I said, every single one of these networks in one way or another impacted me. So I wouldn't say that like Disney Channel impacted me more than the others, but I do have fond memories of some of these shows. And then two more shows that I wanted to mention were PB&J Otter
Okay.
and Out of the Box. And these were
Okay.
more streamlined for younger children, I would say ages maybe 3 to 7. And say PB&J Otter followed some animated otter siblings living in a small town, and I learned what it meant to be a sibling, a friend, a problem solver from a show like that. And then Out of the Box was a show that even today I see a lot of adults mentioning impacted their childhood positively, or
Mm,
their child's childhood, because this show encouraged artistic and musical creativity and imagination. And believe it or not, one host was African American, the other one was Asian American.
yeah.
So that's even more representation on that front. The show invited kids to make most of everyday objects through arts and crafts. So not only was it teaching you and showing you visually, it was, if anything, inspiring you to go out and do crafts on your own, to spark that imagination inside of you,
Mm,
and inspired fun and resourcefulness. That at one point it does extend beyond
mm.
the screen for many of us.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I think it's one of those it's one of those things, where you you have so much there that to work with, and the fact of the matter that they made the most of what they had is great. But I think what's also impressive is that you had something that catered to every single person,
Yep.
on cable. You did there was something for everyone. It wasn't just, like you had this array of shows and you had to pick and choose from a basket. You had
Yeah.
just so much that you could end up going with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you mentioned that Nickelodeon, it wasn't a huge part of your household, right?
So here's the thing. I have a very interesting relationship with Nickelodeon. I was more of a Nick Jr. and Noggin person,
Oh,
um,
those are great. I love those.
than I was actual Nickelodeon. I mean, I know the song Nick, 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 Nick,
Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon. Thank you. I knew the song. Uh, but I just wasn't really into a lot of their programming. Of course, I saw SpongeBob. Of course, I saw Rugrats. You know, those were some of the bigger shows. But I think those are because those were more cartoon oriented. But I wasn't so familiar with a lot of their more live action stuff
Yeah,
that
that's fair.
they did, you know, stuff like Keenan and Kel or
Oh yeah.
their shows that they did, you know, in the studio, you know, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You know, I was aware of the studio that existed in Orlando, Florida, because I would always remember at the end, sometimes they would say this show was recorded at Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida at the very
Oh
end of
yeah.
at the very end of the show. And some Nick Jr. shows were even shot there. I think Gullah Gullah Island was shot there and a
Oh.
few of the others. Unfortunately, that studio is closed now, sadly, but funny enough, a YouTuber actually did manage to get inside of it while there were still remnants of it and was able to show what the studio looked like. And that video's on YouTube, and it went
Whoa.
viral when that happened. Like
You'll have
the
to
studio.
send it to me.
Oh, I will. He basically, okay, he basically snuck in through an open door because the place had been abandoned for a long time, and they still had the Nickelodeon art. They still had some of the computers and stuff in there.
Whoa.
Now it's gone. You can't even tell that it was there. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it's always been my dream that that studio would open back up, but unfortunately, that just don't look like it's gonna happen. But yeah, no, I have a very interesting relationship with Nickelodeon, but I think you have more of a Nickelodeon side versus me, who had more of a Nick Jr. and Noggin side.
Yeah, that's a fair thing to say. Like the kids WB section, I'm just going to be listing these. I'm not going to go in
Absolutely.
depth. But some of the shows that I grew up on that were on Nickelodeon, Nick Jr., Noggin, and CBS TV. A lot of these shows, through acquisition, were just passed around through these networks. So,
Yep.
um, you might not have seen one in one certain broadcasting, but technically these were all in that same realm.
Okay.
Say for Nickelodeon, I grew up watching Rugrats. Rugrats was a really great show that a lot of us grew up on. I don't really need to talk about it, but let's be honest. There are a lot of themes in Rugrats that even us as adults nowadays can't help but think of and shed a tear, you know?
Oh,
And
sure.
then you have shows like Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold was fantastic, especially if you
Oh,
didn't really
hey
have a lot of
Arnold.
friends, because it
Hey
was about a kid
Arnold.
who had a lot of friends.
I do remember watching one episode of Hey
Really.
Arnold, and it was because I was fascinated and still am to this day fascinated with Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast.
Oh,
It was
okay.
something I was obsessed with when I was a preteen, and Hey Arnold did an episode kind of in homage to that event. Um,
Oh, very
it
cool.
was a Halloween episode. It's one of the Halloween episodes. Basically, I think it's Arnold and Gerald go to the top of their um complex that they live in,
Yeah.
and they hack into the radio feed and say that aliens have invaded the earth, much like what Orson Welles and his company did. And the town starts to panic because Helga and her friends all dress up like aliens for Halloween.
Oh my
So now
gosh.
everyone believes that it's real because of that fact. And so that's the only episode to this day of Hey Arnold I have seen.
That is too funny. I definitely recommend this show for anyone who hasn't delved into it. And it has a good movie as well, too, an
Hey Arnold, the
animated
movie.
movie. Yeah, yeah.
I
You
saw
get
ads
really
for that a
great
lot when I was
characters.
a kid.
Oh yeah, it's a really great movie. But along the lines of those iconic shows you had, like John mentioned earlier, SpongeBob SquarePants. I remember that was the talk of school most of the time. If you watch the latest SpongeBob special or show or holiday episode, and then you had more niche titles that not everyone has heard of, especially when it comes to them gearing this more towards girls. But a show that I love and hold dear called As Told by Ginger, which talks
Okay.
about things from, puberty to crushes to this and that to not fitting in to being a weirdo to being bullied. It talks about all of these themes that you normally wouldn't see on a show in Nickelodeon. And
Mm.
then you have a show that completely revolutionized the way that we watch TV. People are still obsessed with this show, and it has created countless spin offs and live action. And that is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yep. Okay, that I have started watching just recently, and that is a great show.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I read the graphic novels. I watched the show in its entirety at least 15 times in my life, and I have yet to see Legend of Korra, but I can say for a fact that Avatar: The Last Airbender, or one, even just Uncle Iroh, has taught me so much about patience and being okay with who I am.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely, 100%.
And then you have a shift in animation. You go from this 2D to a more 3D approach with Jimmy Neutron. And
Oh,
Jimmy
yes.
Neutron was a really great show, a little bit educational, but mostly for entertainment. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
going on the live action boat, like John was saying, you have shows like you said, Keenan. I never actually watched that one, Keenan and Kel, but
Mm.
I did watch a bit of All That and The Amanda Show. I didn't watch too much of All That just because
Mhm.
it sort of started slowing down in production by the time I was a kid. It was mostly a mid 90s show. Uh,
100%, yeah.
but one that definitely took a lot of my time was Drake and Josh. I really loved Drake
Drake
and
and
Josh.
Josh. Okay.
Hmm.
Again,
A
another
lot
one
of
I heard a lot
sibling
of,
things.
but didn't couldn't get into, unfortunately.
It's spherical. But anyway, and then lastly, when it comes to Nick Jr. slash Noggin, I would say the shows that impacted me the most are Little Bear, Little Bill,
Little Bill.
Franklin. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. A Cosby Show, actually.
Hmm.
Franklin and Friends, Oswald, Blues Clues. Actually, I watched Blues Clues on Nickelodeon. I didn't
Same.
watch it on anything else. And Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And lastly, but not least, The Big Comfy Couch. I loved The Big Comfy Couch.
Really? You watched that on Nickelodeon
Oh, I watched it on Noggin.
or Noggin?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because
Yeah.
me, I watched that on PBS.
Oh, on
So I
PBS.
actually have it saved in my PBS section. So when we talk
Really?
about PBS, I'll talk more about Big Comfy Couch. But wow, I didn't know that
Perfect.
aired on Noggin.
Yeah, I watched it on Noggin. It was always late at night. It was like at 8 or 9 p.m., right
Mhm.
after like Fresh Prince, or like right before Fresh Prince, right before The Nanny. I would watch The Big Comfy
Oh,
Couch
right,
because
because reruns of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air aired on Nick at Night.
exactly. And The Big Comfy Couch was basically getting kids ready to go to sleep. And that's why you would watch it around 7 or 8 at night.
Mm. And
But
then
it
Noggin
is
would go off the air and the Nick at Night would start.
exactly. It's similar to how Cartoon Network turned into Toonami and Adult Swim at certain hours and
Yep.
during certain days. But to round it all out, I just want to say that it's worth noting that many of these shows are enjoyable to watch as an adult, since much of the humor and the allegory was crafted by adults for adults and with or for children, but with adults in mind, often in a subtle or innocent way. A lot of these shows that we named offer a relatable insight into experiences like parenting.
Mm.
So if you're a new parent or if you're a parent right now, you can absolutely take the list that we have talked about in the past hour
Mm.
as some sort of recommendation
Sure.
for a more slow paced, informational, but also entertaining outlet for your children.
Absolutely. I think it's really great the stuff you listed. A lot of those shows, the Nick Jr. side that you brought up, I grew up with a lot of those shows. Blue's Clues was a big one I grew up with.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember uh, I always used to want to look like Steve.
How so?
The striped shirt, the khakis, an inflatable thinking chair, the notebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
So literally.
Yeah. Pretty much. If
Yeah,
that's what we
I
want
I sort of already did because I wore long striped tees anyway,
to.
and I was obsessed with stationary items too, so I had
Mhm.
notebooks galore. So in a way, I can say that I somewhat
Oh,
relate to what you're
oh
saying.
no. I actually had the notebook.
Oh, no, I did too. But I
Okay.
also had like a million
Yeah.
different
Hmm.
college ruled notebooks and whatnot.
Exactly. But no, that's funny. Another show I grew up with on Nick Jr. I don't know if you ever heard of this one. I know you mentioned Dora the Explorer and a few of the others. Have you ever heard of Oswald
Oh, I
the
mentioned Oswald.
octopus? Oh, you did?
I mentioned Oswald, but I didn't mention Dora.
Oh, okay. I had it backwards. My bad. My bad. My
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
I had it backwards. Okay, I do. Okay. Dora the
I'm
Explorer.
currently watching. I'm currently rewatching Oswald right now.
Oswald's incredible. I mean,
I know.
you know, he didn't last that long on the channel, but
Mm-mm.
the time he did last felt like an eternity. You
Oh,
know, I mean,
absolutely.
it's a great. He was great. It's probably one of the most calming Nick Jr. shows that
Oh
I've
yeah.
ever seen. You know, it's
Hmm.
just fun, but it's just so mellow.
It is. It
You know,
is.
it's like that's like a show you watch when you need to chill out, you know, or you just need
Oh
to
yeah.
relax. Like Oswald is so relaxing. Dora the Explorer, though, I watched mostly because my cousin was a fanatic for Dora the Explorer. So
Really.
oftentimes I had no choice but to watch. And let's just say after watching for a bit, yes, I did see what it was all about, and I was just kind of
Yeah.
like I was kind of like, yeah, it's a pretty cool show, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dora probably was catered a little bit more to girls, but I mean, there's a fair share of guys on that show. Boots,
Well, they also
Betty,
included Diego too, and then
and then
from
they
there
included Diego, and then he
spawned
gets
off
his
his
own.
own show.
Yeah, he gets his own spinoff of Go Diego Go.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
watched Dora, but it didn't really leave an impact on me, more so because I was already learning Spanish in the comfort of my own home with my
true,
parents.
fair. Yeah,
So,
it wasn't even so much learning the Spanish for me. I think it was more just the adventure part.
oh, I loved playing the Dora video games, but didn't really I guess I did watch Dora the show, but it, like I said, it didn't impact me in the way that it has other children.
Oh, for sure. Another show I grew up with too was something called Max and Ruby. Don't know if you ever heard of.
Oh, Max and I love Max and
Yeah.
Ruby.
I love
Oh,
the
the two
vintage.
bunnies,
I love the vintage setting of Max and Ruby. You can
100%.
tell that's sometime in the 50s. It has to
It
be.
it feels like a storybook. It feels like you're watching a storybook
Because they
happen.
don't have a television.
They don't. I guess I never
They have a
noticed that.
radio, and it's an old school
That's
radio.
so
So
funny.
that's what makes me think it has to be a period piece.
That is so funny.
Yeah, and all they have is the grandmother. And so many people ask the question, where are Max and Ruby's parents? And the author actually finally cleared it up and said, they're there. They're just not present in the stories because I believe children solve problems better on their own.
Yeah, I think that was the same sentiment with Peanuts.
Yeah, Peanuts. That's why the only thing you'll hear, "Hi, mom." Wah 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 wah
Wah, wah,
wah
wah,
wah
wah.
wah wah. That's the only thing you'd ever hear out of an adult on
Yeah.
that show
Yeah.
and whatnot. And it was the same, yeah, like you said with Peanuts, because they felt that that was what helped children learn more, you know? Now, one Nickelodeon show I do want to touch on just because of its history of inventing a very popular substance on the show is a show from the 80s that I didn't really grow up with, but I'm only mentioning it because the product is what I grew up with.
Okay.
The green slime.
Ooh, the slime. You've
And
just been slimed.
the show that started all of that was an 80s show called You Can't Do That on Television. It was
Whoa.
basically SNL for kids, and it was dark. Man, when I say dark, it was dark. It was very controversial. Mr. Rogers even spoke out against the show. He did not like You Can't Do That on Television. Um,
Whoa.
basically, it was a whole group of segments of different ridiculous things, but it all involves kids. There's one where a kid sometimes is up against a firing squad and they have to deliver like last words or something. They never get shot. Let's say that. Usually what happens is the kid outsmarts the adult and then they move away and it's the adult now who's in the line of fire.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. And then there's another part where they go to a diner and they're served all this nasty food that has stuff like mold in it, that has stuff like even raw sewage and all this other disgusting
What?
stuff.
Oh.
I'm not even joking, yeah, and stuff like that. And then there's segments where just some crazy, ridiculous things happen. And of course, there's segments where people get slimed. And that's where Nickelodeon's green slime was originated.
Oh, the history of the slime. I love it.
So that's the only reason I'm including that show. I did start watching reruns of it. It's wild. It is wild.
Where are you
But
watching that currently so that I
Paramount
can
Plus.
also Paramount Plus. Okay,
Paramount
perfect.
Plus has the majority of Nickelodeon and Nick Jr.'s catalog because
Ooh,
they're owned
perfect.
by Viacom, which is now Paramount, now under Paramount.
Perfect.
Yep. So, yeah, if you guys want to go check it out for sure. But that's all I got on Nickelodeon, really, and Nick Jr.
Well, that was a really great fun fact about Nickelodeon's iconic slime.
Yep.
But that's also a perfect segue into one of our favorite segments, if
Let's
not
do it.
our favorite. It is, drum roll please, fun facts and trivia.
Let's go.
Yes, yes, yes. This is the moment in the podcast where John gives you 5 fun facts, I give you 5 fun facts, John gives you 5 trivia, and I give you 5 trivia.
Oh, yeah.
So grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and get
In my
ready to
case,
have your
water.
mind. Yeah, and in my case, Diet Coke.
Heck yeah.
Sit back, relax, and get ready to get your mind blown.
Absolutely.
Okay, I completely forgot who is
I will
starting.
let you start, my friend.
Perfect.
In that case,
Okay, so my fun facts kind of dry, not too mind blowing, but
it's
they're
all good.
still fun and they're still facts.
Let's hear
Okay,
them.
number one, Kids' networks, Kids' networks from this era, and the era being late 90s, early 2000s, quietly pioneered early interactive TV techniques, encouraging active participation that neuroscientists later confirmed boosts learning and retention. So every time an on-screen character talks to children, in a way that is subtly improving their brain capacity and learning retention. So that is an awesome fun fact for you parents, especially.
Wow. That's
Okay, fun fact number two. Many children's shows from this time, like I said, late 90s, early 2000s, were developed with direct input from educators and child psychologists, making them some of the most research-backed entertainment ever produced for children. And we're talking about late 90s, early 2000s. In that tiny little pocket of time, that's when they really changed the game. So that is
yeah,
huge.
that is pretty big.
Yeah. Okay. Number three, before YouTube or Netflix, shows like Nickelodeon's All That were the place where kids saw their favorite comedians and skits. We didn't have TikTok, we
Oh
didn't have
yeah.
Instagram. It was basically SNL for kids, and it really shaped a lot of our humor.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Okay. Number four, between 1998 and 2003, the Magic School Bus was broadcast in over 100 countries and translated into over 20 languages, reaching an estimated 90 million kids worldwide.
Oh
90
yeah.
million kids. That's how many people were impacted by the Magic School Bus, by Miss Frizzle and the Magic School Bus.
Wow, that's incredible. That one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. That's wild to think how many kids all over the world are going to get to experience the fun of Miss Frizzle and the Magic School Bus.
Absolutely. And I think they either are working on it or they just finished a uh another animated reboot. So we'll see how that impacts the future generations. But my last fun
Absolutely.
fact is actually about Dora the Explorer. And Dora the Explorer debuted in 2000, and by 2005 was attracting 2 million daily viewers, becoming,
Damn.
yeah, 2 million daily viewers. That means you're tuning in every single day. 2 million people doing that, becoming one of the first kids shows to successfully teach bilingual skills on a mass scale. How cool is that?
You're welcome, Nickelodeon.
Seriously, seriously, game changing for a fact. But that
Absolutely.
actually completes my fun facts.
All good. All right. I got 5 fun facts for you guys. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off with Cartoon Network. Cartoon Network was created by Turner Broadcasting System, also known as the TBS, using a vast collection of cartoons, including material from MGM, Hanna-Barbera, and Warner Brothers.
Mm,
I thought that was kind of interesting, seeing as many of Cartoon Network's side was a segment called Boomerang, in which a lot of classic
hmm.
cartoons would air on that, which were, sometimes even some of the Looney Tunes would air on Boomerang.
Oh yeah, you had Yogi the Bear, the
Yogi
Jetsons,
the Bear, the
Flintstones.
Jetsons, yep, Flintstones
Oh yeah,
on Boomerang,
on
which would
Boomerang.
and these were shows that were airing when our parents were kids.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And that's how you get that. And then of course Cartoon Network finally spawns off into its own thing. And then you get, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I think was Cartoon Network eventually later. I
Mm.
think, don't quote me on that. But I believe that that's where those even started. If I'm wrong, please correct me, folks. Keep me honest.
Me
Um,
too, me too.
yeah, same there. Secondly, this one, this one's gonna throw you for a loop, my friend. You're gonna be tripping when you hear this one.
All right, do
Let's
it.
hope not literally, but yeah, you might be. Um, the Nickelodeon toy GAC is named after a slang term for heroin, which was unknown to the higher ups at the time it was named.
Wow.
Yeah, so GAC, if any of you kids remember, GAC was like this squishy, kind of gooey, slimy substance that was like this toy you could make you couldn't make things out of it, but you could kind of mold it in your hands. It was almost like
Mm,
Play-Doh that was messy in a sense. You
yeah.
stick, if you stick your fingers in it, it makes a fart noise. It's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of fun. But GAC became one of the main selling points for Nickelodeon because you could go down to any toy store or any place and you could buy your own form of GAC. And GAC was used on the TV shows and stuff and used in the channel in many ways. And then later they find out it's a street term for heroin, I guess. And they're like, what have we done? But I think they figured that, because it's such a
Uh,
big popular thing with us now, we'll just leave it and just pray they don't ever learn what the true meaning is.
hey, I guess you know, you could like gack at different times of your life then.
Absolutely.
No.
Yep.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
crazy. And then number three is also again about the green slime.
Okay.
Nickelodeon's famous green slime, popularized on, as I mentioned, you can't do that on television, is made with ingredients like cream of wheat, green food coloring, and Johnson's baby shampoo.
Oh yeah, the secret ingredient is what makes it delicious, the Johnson's lotion or
Yeah.
baby shampoo.
I mean, hey, same difference. But if it wasn't for that ingredient, the slime might have been edible.
Huh. I'm gonna have to send this to someone from Nickelodeon. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, again, if it wasn't for the baby shampoo, who knows? But hey, at least it wasn't like a whole array of deadly chemicals. It was just a little bit of harmless something. You get a little water and
True.
elbow grease, and you're good to go again.
Now, I don't know if you recall, but they would do like the Kids' Choice Awards or something
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
that. And they would slime either the winner or the loser. I can't remember the details,
yeah.
but there were moments where it would get into people's mouths. So I wonder what they're tasting.
I have to wonder the same thing, and I don't know if the formula was ever changed later on.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yep. And then number four, we're starting to get into more of the PBS territory, which we're going to be covering in our next segment. The fourth fun fact I have is National Educational Television, also known as NET, was an American educational broadcast television network owned by the Ford Foundation, later co-owned by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, operating from May 16th, 1954 to October 7th, 1970, and was succeeded by the Public Broadcasting Service, or the PBS.
Oh, yes, that's the roots, or those are the roots basically, NET and what now we know as PBS, which I hope to continue to forever know it as PBS too.
Let's hope. I mean, NET was kind of interesting. Maybe we'll have to post the logo for NET on the Instagram so people can see
Oh yeah.
what PBS was like before it became PBS.
Oh yeah.
And that's where shows like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood got their start because they started pre 1970.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then number five is Sesame Street is currently the longest running children's show in U.S. history, debuting in 1969 and still airing to this day.
Wow. Wow. What?
Yeah.
It's 61, 62, 63 years old, maybe?
Maybe now, yeah. Yeah, debut.
Maybe now, yeah. Well, late 50. Yeah, wow,
Well,
that is
debuted in the late in '69. So I mean, you cover
yes.
that much territory, you got a
Yeah.
long,
Almost 60 years.
yeah, almost 60 years now.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy, and they're not showing any signs of slowing down. Unfortunately, they did sell, I think, to HBO in the early 2000s,
Oh,
even
okay.
though it still airs on PBS, but still, now they no longer have property of it. So now it's
Mm.
its own thing. And that's why the Sesame Workshop is a thing now, which took over the previous Children's Television Workshop.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Yep. And then that's all I have for fun facts. So I think without further ado, we can get into some trivia.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm excited for this one because I think I'm going to tease your brain a little today. No pun
Please do
intended.
so. All
Um,
right. Go
here
ahead.
we go.
I'm ready for it.
First one. We just talked about the longest running children's show, but Sesame Street is live action. My
Okay.
question for you, my friend, is what is the longest running animated TV show?
Longest running animated TV show. Okay.
I think you can get this.
Well, let's just assume I can't get any of them and let's act surprised if I do.
Okay,
That way
sounds
I don't
good.
set
Okay.
myself up.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, let's see. Let's see. Okay, so animated TV. Animated TV. It's difficult because I feel like I don't have I don't have a good sense of animated timeline, at least before the 60s.
Okay.
But I'm gonna have to like just make a guess of like Looney Tunes.
Okay. I probably should have clarified it a little bit more. So Looney Tunes, not so much because Looney Tunes doesn't air anymore. The answer,
Wait,
or do you
remind
want
say the question one more time. Sorry,
what
I
is
could have
the
misunderstood.
longest what is the longest running animated TV show? So a show that's
Oh,
still
so it's
airing to this
current.
day.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Animated with that. Well, Arthur just ended. Animated, and it's for kids.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it's not The Simpsons then. Uh, SpongeBob.
Ding ding ding. It is
Okay. Okay.
SpongeBob.
Okay.
SpongeBob SquarePants airing from 1996 to the present day,
Yeah.
surpassing Arthur, which originally held the record until Arthur ended its run in 2022.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. I reeled it back a little bit too far, but that makes sense.
Yeah, because SpongeBob is still airing to this day. They're still making new
Mm,
episodes. But Arthur, unfortunately, they called it quits in 2022, which I understand,
wow.
understandably so.
Yeah.
Um, and my second one is what PBS kids show was known for its more nurturing, straightforward approach in tackling everyday subject with kids?
Mr. Rogers.
Ding, ding, ding. That is
Okay.
correct.
Cool.
Mr. Rogers'
Cool.
Neighborhood. Yeah, Mr. Rogers had a very unique presentation for tackling
It
everyday
did.
subjects with kids. We'll talk about that more though in the PBS section because I think it'd be more
Yes.
appropriate to talk about it there. But we can definitely say his approach was definitely probably the one that worked the most, I feel
Oh
like,
yeah, and most memorable
and
too.
most memorable. Okay, number three. I hope you get this one.
I do too.
What kids channel CEO has been the talk of much controversy and even allegations against them, despite
Dan
having quite
Schneider.
an impressive resume? Ding, ding, ding. Yes,
Dan Schneider. All you had to say was allegations.
yes, Dan Schneider, known for pioneering shows like iCarly and Drake and Josh. Schneider came under controversy after it was revealed he had a horrible temper, which he used often against many of his fellow cast and associate members, and allegations of posting creepy photos of people in his shows, and
hmm
also so much more that I'm not going to get into on this
Oh,
episode.
we don't have time to get into that. Oh my gosh,
I don't
that
think I
could be an
even
entire episode on its own.
yeah, exactly, yeah, so that's Dan Schneider.
Oh
Damn.
yeah, yeah. I
Damn,
gotta
dude.
wash my mouth out with Diet Coke.
I need a sip of water after that one.
Yeah.
That was so simultaneous too, the way we did that.
Cheers.
Cheers, absolutely.
Uh,
Number 4. Which channel buried a time capsule in 1992?
you know, I think I have a vague memory of hearing about this, but I genuinely don't know. But I'm gonna guess Nickelodeon because they seem like the
Ding,
type to do that.
ding,
Yeah.
mother effing ding.
I'm sure I can picture it in like an orange vessel of some sort, you
Yes.
know. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Nickelodeon buried a time capsule in front of the now closed Nickelodeon studios. I believe it resides
Whoa.
outside not the for a while it was the Nick Hotel it resided outside of. I think now it's in front of the
Whoa.
Nick Resort.
Wow,
Um
okay.
and it had things in it like Michael Jackson CDs, videotapes of Back to the Future and Home Alone, a Game Boy, a jar of gack, and probably the most famous and probably most priceless, a piece of the Berlin Wall.
What?
Yes, that's in
What?
the time capsule, and it's set to be opened in 2042. April of 2020, 2042 is when it's scheduled to be open.
Okay, how scary is it that we're closer to 2042
That's what
than
that's
when
what I
they
was just about to
actually
say.
dug
That
it
is
up
just what I
or
was just about
put
to
it in?
say. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%. It's scary to think about that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
last, excuse me. And lastly, this one you better get because if you do, I will give you one of my mom's homemade brownies. If you get this next one. And
Do
no,
I smell grass?
and no, there's no grass or in them. I promise you. But no, you get one of
Uh,
my mom's homemade brownies or cookies, whatever you want if you get this next one.
all right, let's hope I get it.
What PBS children's host fought for more funding from the public broadcasting system? For the public broadcasting system.
That would be Fred Rogers.
Yes, ding ding ding. All right. I guess I gotta have my mom make a batch of cookies or brownies now.
I'll send you my address.
Alrighty, sounds good. I'll make
Oh,
sure to
how
send it.
funny.
Fred
Okay.
Rogers addressed the U.S. Senate Chairman John Pastore in 1969 in response to Nixon's proposed plan to cut PBS funding by more than $10 million.
Wow. And look at that now. We're in 2025 dealing with almost the same thing.
Yes, and unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Rogers to fight for
No,
us.
we don't. We don't. But we grew up on Mr. Rogers, and so did millions of other children. So it's our jobs.
And
now,
actually,
now it's on us.
maybe that's something I'll send you too for the Instagram is when Mr. Rogers addressed the Congress when he addressed the Senate because that was incredible in its own right. And John Pastore was known for being a tough guy. And there's
Yeah.
even footage of him when other people are trying to fight for things. He's like, "Get on with it. I'm tired of hearing it. Get to the
Mm.
point."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a man who is not known for being subtle whatsoever.
Yeah. And
But
if you
yet,
haven't watched, and I'm talking to the audience because I know
mm,
that you have,
yeah.
John, there's an amazing documentary called, I believe, Who's Your Neighbor or something like that or Who's My
Won't you
Neighbor?
be my neighbor?
Won't you be my, there you go. Won't you be my neighbor on Mr. Rogers and basically why he is one of the most fundamental characters in a lot of people's childhoods.
Absolutely. And with that, I turn it over to you, my friend.
All right, so mine aren't as mind bending, but definitely let me know your answer and
Okay.
let me know if either John or I stumped you. So let's get started with question one. What was the first children's TV network to introduce the concept of slime as a trademark for its shows?
Nick, 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 Nick. Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon. Ding, ding, ding. That is correct. Okay, you're starting off great. Let's
Okay,
see
let's keep
where
going.
we take you on this second question. Let's keep
Okay,
the ball rolling with
let's do it.
question
I'm
two.
ready.
What did kids typically use to check TV schedules before online streaming existed?
The TV guide.
Yup. Ding, 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 ding. And if you missed your show, sorry. You're gonna have to
Yep.
wait till next week or reruns.
Well, if you want to watch that episode, you got to wait for a rerun.
Oh yeah. Oh
Okay, I'm
yeah.
on fire.
Okay.
I'm on
You're on
fire.
fire. Okay, question 3. Let's see. Let's see if you can keep it up. What did the TVY rating stand for?
Youth.
Pretty much all children. Ding ding ding. I'll take that answer.
Okay. Sounds
There
good.
you go.
Sorry,
There
I'm
you
not
go.
leaving a lot of room for you guys to answer, but these are a little bit more straightforward that I'm
Oh
so used
yeah.
to.
Oh, yeah. Okay, question 4. What fast food chain was associated with kids' meals toys based on TV shows?
Oh, I think I know. I think I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
It's probably the most iconic fast food restaurant in America. I think they serve French fries. I think they serve a Big Mac, and I think they serve McNuggets. Is it McDonald's?
Ding, 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 ding. You're McRight.
And oh, I forgot the Happy Meal. How did I forget
The
the Happy
Happy
Meal? Because that's what
Meal.
they came with, the Happy Meal.
I'm loving it.
I'm loving it.
There we go. Okay, well, you pretty much killed it. Let's see if you can go 5 for 5
Let's go five
with
for five.
question number 5.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
And the hardest question of all, because I know how much you hate PBS. What color was the PBS Kids logo for the most of the 2000s?
Green, white, and black?
Well, you got the first one right. It's
Green.
green for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
The only reason I
yes.
say green, white, and black is because that's the logo, but green.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's green.
Green. Yeah. You got 5 for 5.
Wow. I got them all right. Let's go.
Let's go.
I think you got 5 for 5 too.
Let's go, guys. Come on. If you guys also got 5 for 5, definitely leave us a comment on one of our posts telling us how well you did on the fun facts and trivia segment.
That's it for part 1, but stay tuned because we have a whole lot more coming up. You guys are going to learn about the public broadcasting system and the many amazing shows that came with it. Shows like Barney and Friends, Arthur, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Sesame Street, and so many more. You guys are also going to hear our opinion about what's going on with the PBS and all of the funding issues that it's having, and you're also going to hear our final thoughts about how we feel children's media has impacted us for better or for worse. You guys are not going to want to miss this. So until tomorrow, this is John Cody for Rewind Room, and we will catch you all on the Rewind. Stay tuned.